So, let's say you have billions and billions of dollars to throw around. Enough to buy your very own top-flight soccer team. You've struck it big. You've practically got a license to print money. Except it's not as simple as that. Actually owning a soccer team, or really any professional sports team, is a risky venture. To create a winning team from a losing team requires a significant financial and personal investment, and not all owners are willing to make that investment. Many owners see their team not as a civic institution with generations of supporters, but just another asset that can be shuffled around at will. A few stand out as spectacularly inept, apathetic, and/or lacking in business sense. But what if I told you that the worst football owner of all time came from Wales? In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Barrytown F.C. were the undisputed kings of Welsh football. From 1996 to 2003, they won 7 league titles and 18 total trophies. In 2001, they became the first Welsh team ever to win a UEFA Champions League tie, when they beat Azerbaijan champions FC Shamkir in the qualifying round. 2 weeks later, they picked up perhaps the proudest victory in their history by defeating Jose Mourinho's FC Porto 3-1. That match was altogether moot because they'd lost the previous leg 8-0 on the road and wouldn't advance, but as a point of pride for Welsh football, it was profound. Little did anyone know it was the beginning of the end. In the coming years, Barrytown ran into hard times. They kept winning silverware but lost money, a side effect of being the first fully professional team in the Welsh League. Attendance sagged. They played in Jenner Park, a stadium that held 2,500 fans, but drew 500 on a good day. There is no single reason for this, but perhaps after seeing teams from across Europe come to their tiny little neck of the woods, fans probably grew tired of watching Barry pound on the same Welsh teams time and again, and stopped coming. Needing a spark to boost their sagging finances, the team turned to new chairman and former Wimbledon Crazy Gang member, John Fashanu.
John Fashanu. John Fashanu. John Fashanu. John Fashanu. John Fashanu. That's John Fashanu tonight on BBC Two.
Fash the Bash, as he's called, came in with extravagant promises, saying that he would make Barrytown a feeder for the likes of Manchester United, even promising the team international TV rights deals in China and Africa. Then 8 months later, he was gone, having left to take part in the reality TV series, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And get out of here he certainly did. By the time Fashanu left, Barrytown had racked up debts in the 6-digit range, which may not sound like a lot, but for a Welsh team, it certainly is. 2003-04 was when Barrytown's financial hardship finally caught up to them. Sensing the end of the road, much of the first team jumped ship for clubs who would pay them in something other than promissory notes. Barry had no choice but to field a group of amateurs who had just played for teams 5 or 6 levels lower on the Welsh pyramid. By December, the club needed £100,000 to pay off various creditors, or it would fall into administration and likely cease to exist. In what would become a theme for the future, a band of Barrytown supporters rallied around their stricken club and attempted to pool together the money to keep the team afloat, but found themselves £30,000 short. Out of nowhere came a savior. Meet Stuart Lovering, a local businessman and barrister, that's British for lawyer. In December 2003, Lovering paid £125,000 to purchase the club and assume all of its debt. Said one fan, "The whole atmosphere was extremely upbeat. There were so many supporters there to hear the news, and we are very pleased to have Stuart on board." this would not last. Barry Town finished the season with only 3 wins, and were relegated to the second tier of the Welsh football pyramid. For a team that had won league and cup doubles in the past 3 consecutive seasons, this was an embarrassment. But the new owner wasn't going to let them go down without a fight. Oh no. He was going to rely on his experience with the law to get his team out of this one. You see, as champions of the Welsh Second Division, Airbus FC, yes, that is a real team, were due to be promoted. But they had a problem. They were sharing a stadium with another team, Conwy United, at the time. And that stadium apparently wasn't up to Welsh Premier League specifications, and had failed an inspection earlier in the year. As such, Lovering made an appeal that since one team hadn't upgraded their stadium in time, then the team that they were hosting should not be given the promotion that they earned. Thus, Barry should be allowed to keep their spot in the league, which they had lost. Naturally, this did not fly, so Barry were doomed to the drop. Thus, Lovering did what any sensible football club owner would do in this situation. He raised ticket prices for the following season. Severely raised ticket prices, to the highest point of any Welsh team. Naturally, there were complaints from the official supporters club. Lovering took their criticism to heart and promptly banned them from fundraising for the club as they had done for years, or even meeting at the stadium clubhouse. One fan was even sent this 3-page typed letter from Lovering himself. "The only bad thing happening at this club is you and the supporters club committee's behavior, which has been selfish and naive. You were part of the old regime that brought this club to the edge of extinction, but you have failed to learn the lessons of the past. You thought you could continue just as you did leading up to the bankruptcy." Lovering's penny-pinching misanthropic ways extended to the team itself. On the eve of the 04-05 season, he sacked manager Colin Addison with seemingly no explanation, then left his replacement with nothing but table scraps to work with. Even as they challenged for promotion back to the top, Lovering ran the team on a shoestring budget, causing the new manager David Hughes to resign mid-season in frustration. So Lovering did what any sensible football club owner would do in this situation. He slashed the budget again. Then again, Barry Town had been strapped for cash before this, and surely some of that money was going toward other expenses such as staff, travel, rent. Oh yeah, about that. Yeah, during all of this, Lovering decided that he was apparently too good to pay the rent at Jenner Park. And by January of 2005, Barry Town would no longer play their home games in Barry. In fact, because they had accumulated so much debt to the local council, they couldn't use any stadium nearby. As such, they took their ball and moved to Treforest, 22 miles away. This arrangement would continue for a year and a half. To those living in the US, that might not sound like a big deal. Over here, sports venues are often built miles and miles away from the center of the metropolitan area. But Wales doesn't have a sprawling interstate highway network comparable to the United States, or hell, even England for that matter. Now Barry fans had to take an hour-long train ride to watch their home team, and by this point they were more than fed up. Some were so fed up that they raised funds to form Barry F.C., a new Barry team.
With blackjack and hookers.
In response, Lovering did what any sensible football owner would do, and threatened to sue the new team and everyone involved, saying, "There are thousands of people in Barry who follow Barry Town in Division 1 and have not the slightest interest in a dog and duck second 11 playing at the bottom of the Vale League." Now, in fairness, this whole mess wasn't entirely his fault, depending on how you interpret things. The rent was set at £42,500 per year, which is almost half the amount that Lovering had paid for the team to begin with. Well, geez, if only we had fans willing to inject us with cash, maybe this situation wouldn't be so difficult. By the start of the 06-07 season, Barry Town, the real deal, were back at Jenner Park, and they were relegated. Again. In comes a guy named Gavin Chesterfield. You've probably never heard of him, but by the end of this video, you would worship the ground he walks on. In 07-08, somehow, Chesterfield led Barry Town to a promotion back to the First Division, which is really the Second Division. But as always, Lovering's tomfoolery overshadowed everything that happened on the field. Behind the scenes, Barry Town were trapped in a vicious cycle, wherein Stuart Lovering repeatedly held his own club for ransom. Multiple times over his ownership of the club, Lovering put the team up for sale at a price several times higher than what he'd paid for it, each time threatening to pull the team out of the league unless someone came forward with the money. The closest call came in 2010 when Clayton Jones, owner of a local bus company, who had actually been outbid by Lovering back in 2003, made a serious bid, but just when it looked like a done deal, Lovering upped the asking price at the 11th hour and brought the deal to a crashing halt. Jeez, what a petty man. I'd hate to imagine what it was like to work for him. Well, thanks to a fella named Ben Dudley, we don't have to. In this 2012 blog post on Supporters Not Customers, he detailed his brief but revealing time with Barry Town when he took up a media position with the club that lasted less than a week.
Within 30 seconds of the interview starting, he told me I could have the job, but he wasn't sure when I could be paid. It would only be a few months, he reassured me. Moving on from this revelation at a rapid pace, he informed me that my job was to increase the stature of the club, to be similar to Galatasaray or Fenerbahce, and was convinced the club could draw crowds around the same size of Cardiff City, who were attracting at least 20,000 or so for every league match at this time. He told me that we would be running a weekly Barry Town newspaper, which would get the people back on board and the club back into the Champions League. The place was an absolute tip, which looked like it had not been maintained for several years. Behind one door was the world's dirtiest mattress, with a Chinese man wearing only his pants asleep on it. Every room had discarded pizza boxes, which suggested this man was not alone in living at the ground. As well as these unexpected tenants, there was evidence of disrepair everywhere you looked, with exposed wiring, rubbish not taken out for months, and a balcony which Lovering described as luxury for special guests. The only problem was it looked like it would fall down if so much as a mouse stood on it, and had a tree growing out of the middle.
Dudley ended with a statement that turned out to be awfully prophetic.
Barry Town celebrate their 100-year anniversary this year. Without the help of the football community, there will not be a 101st.
By 2011, the Supporters Club had taken over all of Barry Town's football operations. They paid the rent, they put together a 44-page team program, they organized end-of-year gatherings, sold tickets, paid fines. They were effectively doing all of Stuart Lovering's work for him, and thanks to Gavin Chesterfield, they were winning. They finished 6th in the 2011-12 season, and were putting up a good fight for promotion the following year. Well, that sounds great, right? Well, not if you're Stuart Lovering. At this point, his meddling evolved from mere mismanagement into outright sabotage. Even though he had given up day-to-day control by this point, he had also assumed the position of club secretary, where he could do even more damage. He made more and more attempts to sell the team, on his terms, sabotaging each and every one of them. The Supporters Club itself put a bid in to purchase the team, which was denied when Lovering drew up a ridiculous contract which would have had him retain power for several years after the sale. Meanwhile, on the field, The team reached the semi-finals of the Welsh Cup for the first time in years. Lovering celebrated the occasion by sacking the beloved Chesterfield as manager. Chesterfield promptly ignored Lovering and showed up for work as if nothing had happened. Damn. Finally, on May 7th, 2013, Stuart Lovering went for the nuclear option. Hours before their scheduled match against I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Lovering phoned the Welsh League and the Vale of Glamorgan Council to tell them that he was withdrawing the team from the league immediately. Why? Well, just because. There were still 2 games left to play that season, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except that Stuart Lovering be proven right. A team that was once the kings of Welsh football, a team that could once stand toe-to-toe with the giants of Europe, saw its history flushed down the toilet at the whim of a psychopath. And again, this was during Barry's 100th season. Why did this happen? I don't think we'll ever know. Why did Stuart make such a big stink of selling the team multiple times only to pull the plug, then start the whole mess over again? Why did he proclaim grand ambitions of turning Barry into a European power with a massive stadium, and then turn around and act shocked when he was handed a massive bill for the stadium's rent? Hell, there was stuff I didn't even cover here due to time or because I couldn't find a newspaper article to verify that it actually happened, but I'm pretty sure it did. That's why I have him pegged as the worst. Others may have inhibited their club's progress. Lovering outright destroyed his club for a few months. Now no longer having to deal with Lovering, the supporters committee reformed the football club under a new name, Barrytown United. Of course, now that the original team had withdrawn, the new owners would have to apply to the Football Association of Wales for re-entry into the Welsh football pyramid. In June of 2013, the FAW, for reasons still unknown, ruled that the new club would be restricted to playing recreational football, basically Sunday League or Beer League soccer. To the people who had poured their hearts into keeping the club alive, this was a slap in the face. In August, a High Court judge overturned the ruling, and the FAW duly put them in the 4th tier of Welsh football. Not the best result, but certainly better than the alternative. Gavin Chesterfield, who arguably could have taken a managerial job anywhere he wanted, stuck around and is still managing the club to this day. The club won 2 straight league titles, bringing them right back to the 2nd tier. They capped off their dramatic revival in 2017 with a 3rd-place finish, which granted them promotion to the Premier League. The supporters are still running the club, and thanks to them, this story has a happy ending.